So IDC is the Independent Democrats in New York, or they were. So what is this group? It's a nonsense group created by Andrew Cuomo. He claims he didn't create it. It's a total lie. I'll explain why in a second. He created it so that he could have an excuse to vote with Republicans. And he could say, oh, well, golly gee, what could I do? The Republicans, well, New York's a very blue state, but their Senate is very mixed. So the Democrats, this independent Democrats, kind of like Joe Lieberman, go and hold all the power because they're the swing votes and they can decide who wins and who doesn't. And some of the times they decide the Democrats are gonna win when Andrew Cuomo gives them the green light. And a lot of times they say, oh, well, no, I decided the Republicans are gonna win. It's a trick. Now, we said it was a trick from day one. In fact, the group got formed immediately after Cuomo got elected governor. Interesting timing, but the timing gets more interesting. So when Cynthia Nixon challenged Cuomo and that news came out, immediately after that news came out, she's a celebrity, he was a little bit more worried. There's some progressive wins in the country. At the time, there was not as many, but still he was being careful. And voila, he had lunch, this is reported, no one's denying it, with the independent Democrats and said, you're now done, son, you're gone, your group doesn't exist anymore.
Particularly Jeff Klein, the one, the senator from the state senator from the Bronx, and he was the one who, who spearheaded it to begin with the governor's presumed approval. So it wasn't, there's still argument over whether it was Cuomo's idea sitting up in Albany to do it, or Jeff Klein and some of the others were so tired of the way it was going that at least to be able to move their caucus over would have been something they wanted to do. But the governor didn't stop them or fight them, as any Democratic governor would do. He just allowed it to go on.
So look, I got no love for Jeff Klein. You want to blame Jeff Klein too? Have at it, Hoss, okay? But is Cuomo responsible? Absolutely, no question. It got formed right after he got elected. It got disbanded the minute he literally disbanded it himself when Cynthia Nixon entered the race. He stopped bothering to have a pretense. He got them in a room and said, you are finished. He was obviously in charge the whole time. And it is like the prototypical corporate establishment Democrat move. So because at a federal level, well, Republicans win all the time, and so they control the House or they control the Senate or both. So a Democratic president could go, there was nothing I could do. But in the case when the Republicans don't have power, you got to find an excuse. And they're almost always called independent Democrats. Not independent Democrats like Bernie Sanders that are actually to the left and more progressive. Those are the ones that corporate Democrats tell you, oh, they're not real Democrats. They're not real Democrats, they're progressives. Because in their mind, a real Democrat's a sellout. It's a corporate shill. So what did Obama do? We could have pushed for single payer, decided not to push for single payer. Could have had public options, so at least we have an option for to not use private health insurance. And he had a super majority. He had 60 Democrats in the House. He had in the Senate. He had the House. He had everything he needed. Here comes independent Democrat Joe Lieberman to the rescue. And Joe Lieberman said, I'm not for a public option, I'll vote with the Republicans. So Obama's like, oh, thank you, I really appreciate it. Joe Lieberman, by the way, his mentor in the Senate, and they had a nice little handshake, and they said, we'll pretend to progressives that I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it because of you, Joe. Isn't that funny? That's really funny. So they didn't do the public option, and even though they had every opportunity in the world, they set up a system where private insurance was still in charge. And by the way, look at it now. Prices are still sky high, and then progressives get blamed for it. So now in the state of New York, you go there, anytime corruption needed to be blocked, God damn, there's nothing we could do, man. The independent Democrats, golly gee. Anytime any progressive thing needed to happen. Now, did some progressive actions happen in the course of all this time with Cuomo? Yes, they did, we're fair. So gay rights got advanced in the state of New York, that's wonderful. By the way, they did it through corruption. They bribed 4 Republicans to flip over, but I'll take it. I mean, I'll take advancement. I don't want it to come through corruption, okay? But at least it was something positive, and that happened. But it's easy to be progressive on social issues. But when you get to corporate issues and money, that's where you need the independent Democrats to constantly vote with the Republicans so that the corrupt Andrew Cuomo's of the world can go, golly gee, there's nothing I could do. It turns out Cynthia Nixon enters the race. It was something he could have done all along. He could have that lunch anytime he wanted and disbanded them. So Cuomo's winning tonight and likely will win.
We have a call, actually.
In fact, here you go, right in the middle of our live coverage.
It has been called for Andrew Cuomo.
Yes, and he had too big a lead from the get-go. So Andrew Cuomo, the winner in New York.
Can I mention one thing on that?
Yes.
Just because it's in our election notes. In the final 3 weeks of the campaign, he spent $8.5 million compared to Nixon's $450,000.
That's
absurd. 20 times as much money, I believe.
Well, but that's exactly why Andrew Cuomo likes corruption. Corruption isn't the problem for him, it's the solution. So now, what do we have left as we're covering this election live? And anytime we're doing election nights, guys, don't miss it. If there's ever an election, tyt.com/live. There's gonna be a giant one on November 6th. Ted Cruz, Andrew Gillum versus DeSantis, 26 Justice Democrats, etc. Don't miss it, okay? Now, we're gonna track this tonight for you guys. How the IDC in New York, those are the so-called independent Democrats, how they are doing tonight. What I'm rooting for big time, and which is entirely possible, is that they all lose and are sent home and never soil the earth of New York State again, okay? They are the worst of the worst. They are wolf in sheep's clothing. They are corporate shills who pretend to be on your side and then screw you over every single time. So now having said that, let's check in on their races and see how they're doing.
So far, that is some of the good news. And although it looks like he will be maintaining his position in the governor's mansion, he might find that some of the people who are helping him to achieve his goals in that underhanded way are suddenly replaced by the people who are going to be holding him the most accountable. We're not done with these races just yet, but if we start off, there's been a number of challenges to former IDC members. They're still, they still have their goals. Zelnor Miri running against Jesse Hamilton. Zelnor Miri currently up by 12 points.
Nice.
Working Families Party candidate.
What about John
Excellent, excellent.
John Liu is the next one, and all of my time. Okay, John Liu is currently up.
The city.
Oh, is he? Okay, well, he is up by 2 points over Tony Avella right now.
What percentage reporting? What percentage of
on these races? I don't know.
Oh,
probably similar, but I don't know.
Okay, so in the governor's race, it was in the 20s.
Yes.
So these races, especially the close ones, if they're in the 20s, 30s now, that means that it could go either way. If you're up or you're down by 4 points with only 30% reporting, it doesn't mean a thing. It means something, but it does. But there's still a lot to go. If you're down by a lot with 30% reporting, you're done. So this is what we tell you on every election night. It's really important you understand this context. It depends on where the votes are coming from. And the second thing that matters is the percentage of precincts reporting. Because let's say you get to 50%, if you're down by 10, that means you got to win the next 50 by 20, okay? And it becomes more and more prohibitive as the night wears on. So for the people that are beating the IDC guys, they're in good shape, especially if you're up by 10. That's a really good, solid number. If you're losing by 2, don't sweat it yet.
Yeah, you don't sweat it, but by the same token, it's different for a statewide. That maximum holds statewide much more than it would in a small, tiny state senate or state assembly district, because there isn't as much diversity within the confines of a district as there would be in a state in terms of voting.
That's right. So the percentage might hold more in a smaller area than it would in a more diverse area like the state of New York, where Manhattan and Queens might be very different than Buffalo and Syracuse.
Now, just quick mention so that I don't forget, Julia Salazar is up actually by 14 points over Martin Dillon, despite all of those scandals that we were talking about earlier, or attempted scandals. So we also have Alessandra Biaggi going against Jeffrey Klein, had actually been up until a few minutes ago, is currently down by 2 points, 51-49.
Okay,
so that's a close
that is one of the most important races of the night. And it would be fantastic if Jeff Klein lost. See, these guys think they're so smart and clever, that they're gonna, and by the way, for a long time, they largely had the press on their side, so it was easy to trick people. The press, I have a couple of issues with it. One is, it's largely corporate, and so they don't think like we do. They think, what do you mean, supporting corporations? They're pro-business. That's a plus for them, right? They don't get it that pro-business doesn't mean is not in a bubble. A lot of times that is by taking advantage of the consumers and the citizens, et cetera. If they didn't do that, then I'd be pro-business too. So it's a giant difference. Oftentimes they get campaign donations, independent expenditures, and then voila, they give things to our taxpayer money to those businesses. That is what you almost never see, including, by the way, so there's the corporate press, cable news, and all those guys. And then there's places like the New York Times. I think they have a different problem. The problem with the New York Times is not that they're not genuine, it's not that they're not decent people trying to do the right thing, but they grew up in a bubble where talking about how having more money is a good thing. But in the reality is, now Andrew Cuomo just spent $8.5 million, like John just told you. You think that's a good thing to have $8.5 million? That means he got $8.5 million in bribes. Corporations don't give to a politician because they're looking to cure cancer. They give it to him because they're looking for a return on investment. And the fact that the New York Times does not report that just like that is a giant failing of the New York Times. Gigantic. I mean, are the reporters of the New York Times so gullible, so ridiculously naive that they think that all those real estate interests are giving money to Andrew Cuomo, what, for their health? Because they think, hey, you know what? I really am interested in gay rights. No, they're doing it to get favors. And what does Andrew Cuomo give them? He gives them favors in spades. He's done more for the real estate industry and their money against the interest of most of the citizens of New York than you could possibly imagine. So and then this media creates a situation where you'd have the IDC and they would go, oh no, you should applaud us because we are independent and bipartisan. And the most important thing in the mainstream media is, are you bipartisan? Are you bipartisan? Who cares if you're bipartisan? Are you for the people? What are the policies that you care about? But no, to somebody working, even a good person at the New York Times, their number one thing is, are you civil? And number two is, are you bipartisan? Well, that protects the status quo. So, but now the internet exists. So the IDC is exposed. So 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 6 years ago, right? You don't want to go back too far, then IDC doesn't exist. Let's say 6 years ago, okay? IDC, oh well, important, interesting group. And will there be some criticism in the press? Of course. They're not a monolith and they're not bad people and some of them are good reporters. There'll be critiques from time to time. But overall, hey, you tell me this, I'm gonna put it in the paper. Now, the internet can't stand the IDC and the word is out. And so it's still a balancing act. The internet is competitive with television and the papers, but has it overtaken everything? And when I say the internet, what do I mean? Do I just mean the entirety of the internet is for progressives? No, but are people, younger generation that grew up online more progressive? Yes, but more important than any of that is, they can do something simple called Googling it, okay? They could look things up. Whereas in the old days, TV just jammed it down your throat. Bipartisan is awesome. They still do it, to this day they do it, right? Whereas now you can go, yeah, that's interesting, you tell me it's awesome. But I read an article from The Intercept or The Guardian, or I watched the Young Turks or wherever, and they told me that their voting record is actually terrible. And so I think the internet has changed the game. We haven't won completely yet. We're not at the end of that process. We're in the middle of that process.
So can I ask you a quick question? So the editorial board for the New York Times called Andrew Cuomo sleazy and the lowest form of politics, and then endorsed him. I don't. So what is that? Just pathology, or is that they're good people, but they're just morons? Or
no, it's groupthink. It's groupthink. It's a bubble. I'm telling you right now, the New York Times editorial board, and that's why I say they're not bad people. They're not stupid. They see what Cuomo's doing. There was a ethics board that was investigating the people Cuomo wanted investigated. They then started investigating him. And then he's like, okay, no, it's good. Yeah, I want the ethics board, right? That's investigating me, good, that's wonderful. And they're like, okay, now we found some stuff. He's like, whoa, what do you mean you found stuff? You're disbanded. He just disbanded a group looking into him because they found things. It's Trumpian.
It's very Trumpian.
Yeah, and so the New York Times, they see that. They're not bad people, they're not that gullible. They call that out, they say that's bad, okay? Good, wonderful. And so that's why they call him sleazy. But to the New York Times editorial board, the idea of endorsing Cynthia Nixon is unthinkable. A progressive who doesn't have, in their mind, enough experience. Now, Michael and I had this debate on a previous election, not a debate, but a discussion. To me, I don't want them having the experience of being a sleazy, corrupt politician. I don't view that as a positive. I view that as a giant negative. I'd take a person off the street over Andrew Cuomo. I would, literally, I would take a person off the street over a guy I know to be corrupt. The devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. No, the devil I know, I already know is a devil. The other guy might turn out to be decent. And Cynthia Nixon has positions that I totally agree with. But the New York Times thinks a progressive, without my beloved establishment credentials. Hell no. And And if you told them that, they would be outraged because they genuinely believe that they are honest actors. I'm not saying they're dishonest actors. I'm just saying they
you
come.
are a little bit, right?
No, I'm not. I'm saying they come from a groupthink,
Right.
a
Okay,
bubble
that's
mentality,
fair,
right? Where they view the
Class.
status quo as a given.
Right.
So no matter how sleazy Cuomo is, well, it's a given that we're going to endorse
Well, most
him.
especially because New York City politics are a lot like Andrew Cuomo and have, it's not an excuse, but for a century, certainly my entire life growing up in New York City was the theater of New York City politics. I mean, Mario Biaggi, the father of Alessandra Biaggi, who we want to see beat Jeff Klein tonight, he almost went to prison and had to resign from the House. He was a Bronx politician, tough, corrupt, beloved, and that was that era of politics. When George Pataki went to Albany, he came not from the city. It was a different kind of politics up there. He wasn't able to get a ton done, but it certainly changed the feel. Then Cuomo goes back up there and he brings the New York City Cuomo machine politics up there, and that's what you have, and it trickled down into the ledge. And all of the things that happened there happened because of that kind of, it's a groupthink politically. You were talking about an editorial board, which is by definition almost a groupthink, and that's what they had there. So the New York Times, you can understand, would be so accustomed to, oh yeah, this is Andrew, we know what this is. This is like you're talking devil, and that's because it has been so entrenched in New York, and it's so hard to fight with a New York City politician going to Albany. I'm not excusing it, it's just really, I think, interesting.
That's why it's great to have this panel, because you're right, that is the correct analysis of that phenomenon that goes on in New York. But it's not just New York. I'll just say this one more thing. I've now covered every single state in this primary season, and same thing in Kansas, same thing in Hawaii, same thing all over the country. Every paper thinks if you're an establishment politician, you are legitimate. If you have raised a lot of money, you are legitimate. If you're an outsider, you are illegitimate. I will not give you free press. I will give an institutional, gigantic advantage to your establishment opponent because of that groupthink. Because they think outsiders, by definition, and most progressives are outsiders, are not legitimate. And that groupthink has cost the progressive movement literally millions, perhaps billions of dollars in free media coverage that the establishment candidates get. And that is unintentional, but really important systemic corruption.
So a few updates I'd like to give, and then we can get back into this. It has been called for Julia Salazar. So despite all of the attempts to take her down, awesome candidate. At the state legislature level, reminiscent in terms of policy and obviously background in some ways to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
So that's a huge win for progressives. Yes. Excellent, excellent.
By the way, Alessandria Biaggi is back up again by 2 points.
Excellent on that. Here come the progressives. And look, it's
not a good night to be in the IDC. They're two of the challengers I think are not currently beating the former IDC members, but the majority are.
That's excellent. And so, guys, I want you to understand that too. These progressive victories are really stunning because they're against all the odds. They're against the odds in media coverage. They're against the odds in money. They're against the odds in fighting the machine. So you should not don't get too depressed that, hey, Cuomo had a big win against Cynthia Nixon in the big marquee matchup. Taking out the IDC in New York with all those odds against you. Right now, as we're doing this live, Jumaane Williams doing great in the lieutenant governor race, almost miraculously, so much better than in the governor's race, which is, as Michael explained earlier, a bizarre phenomenon. So these progressive, the growth and if they turn into victories tonight, and the other victories that we have seen, I wouldn't say they're miraculous, that's too strong. We told you exactly how they were gonna happen, if they were gonna happen, and that is how it's played out. Now, having said that, they are a sign of incredible strength for the progressive movement. Now, imagine what they could do if the odds were even. Yeah. And I think that they're gonna be a lot closer to even in the year 2020. Because once you put all those wins on the board, you've proven out something, and then we have 2 years to work on the rest of the press to go, hey, knucklehead, sometimes you should look at other factors other than who has taken the most amount of corporate money. On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.